Welcome to the Mythic Plus Pug Healing Guide 2023. My name is Bowser the Healer, and if you're not a healer player, don't worry. There's still a lot of very good Mythic Plus information here, but then eventually we're going to transition into more healing-based things, so if you want to get into the mind of a healer, you're also in the right place. Down below, I'm going to have everything I can possibly grab linked. My add-ons, my profiles, my weak auras, you name it, I'm going to try to have it down below. No paywalls, no nothing like that. I only ask that you hit the like button if you like the video, and you get subscribed if you want more content like this, but there's a ton to go through. Let's get into it. Use the comment section if you have any questions. Mythic Plus culture. So it's a bit of a wild west out there. My only request to you as a player is that you're personally responsible for your play. So if you have something like NVIDIA Shadow Play, like an instant replay system, that's wonderful for double checking things that go wrong or things that go incredibly well. You can use things like details to track damage taken or deaths to kind of see what people were doing wrong or getting hit by the most. There's lots of tools out there, and players, they're going to vary. You're going to have groups that do amazing and groups that do terrible. You're going to have people calling you out for mistakes that are completely right. You got to take that on the chin and just learn. And then you're going to have people calling you out for mistakes that have no idea what they're talking about. So try not to get too personally invested, right? If a group falls apart, try to be nice and just go next. It's the best advice I can give. Okay, on to some weak auras. We got two here. They're both going to display in the party finder window, and these make finding groups a heck of a lot easier. The server region name is just going to tell you where the group is located. That's going to help you avoid any unnecessary lag, and so you don't have to memorize a bunch of server names and where they are. The weak aura for class colors is just going to display what classes are in a key. They're not going to necessarily be able to give you specializations outside of the process of elimination. It can be great to go into a dungeon knowing, hey, this group has 2 battle reses, or oh, there's a priest in this party, we're gonna have mass dispel. That sort of thing is an absolute godsend. And also, if you want to find a good meme key, right, like 4 warriors and a healer, or a whole monk party, this is another great way to find those keys. I have some pretty strong opinions about this one. Deadly boss mods and big wigs. I honestly think basically every player should have them installed. If you don't like how invasive they are, they're very customizable, so I highly recommend customizing them. But we know this from esports, we know this from sports and from rally racing and all sorts of disciplines. Having callouts just helps with the mental stack. It helps players focus on their gameplay while still doing mechanics. It's great, it's super useful. Highly recommend you set it up. I would not be entering Mythic Plus without it. It's simply too good, it's too strong, and it'll make you a better player. If you're the keystone holder and it's your run that you're posting, make sure that you initiate a ready check. You can use /RC for this, and a pull timer once everyone's ready with /pull. /pull by default will do 10 seconds. Players have pre-pull things to do that they always want to set up, and even if they don't, it's a nice polite way to tell people to tab out of whatever internet browser or something that they're doing and be ready to play. For learning dungeons, I have a couple of pieces of advice. First and foremost, the Mythic Plus Dungeon Journal actually gives you a ton of information. Short reads, great for bosses, it's a good start. But if you need more, my best advice is find a favorite YouTuber. Go watch them do a run on Twitch or on YouTube, and you'll get a general sense of the route. If you want to get into the nitty gritty though, Mythic Dungeon Tools is an add-on that's simply a mapping tool for routes, and you can click into every single mob, see what they cast, see what kind of CC is usable on them. Incredibly powerful tool. But what if that intimidates you, the whole percent business? Well, unless you're a tank, it's not really your job. So you'll learn those magical little percent numbers as you play. Try not to make that something you're stressing about as a healer, because we already have enough things to stress out about. Interrupts, CC, and off healing, if you're a DPS player, are mandatory at this point in World of Warcraft. So make sure you have them on hand and they're easy to hit. You will learn as the key levels go up. Some moves, you have to interrupt them, and then other moves can be ignored. But as that key level goes up, there are some things that go from like, ooh, that hurts, to, oh, that's lethal. Details is an add-on that lets you track DPS and healing, but it also lets you track a ton of other things too. And one of the ones I mentioned earlier are track some deaths. It's not toxic to see why people died. It's in fact super useful because you can learn some very niche things about the game, and you can also learn like, hey, what move is that? Oh, I could have interrupted that. Or, oh, that's a frontal. I didn't know that mob had a frontal. And that kind of information, again, it just saves lives. So have a death window. Thank me later. Okay, so now onto more of the healing side of things. Mana management is important on every single healer. First of all, make sure you are talented into your mana regen of whatever your class does, and learn how to play in low mana. Spend time reviewing what you can do that doesn't cost a ton of mana. See if you have any combinations or spells that you can use that might be even mana positive. It is important that we yell at the tank sometimes that we need a drink before we go into the next boss fight, but I've had bosses that get pulled and I'm at 20% mana, and what do? You gotta work with what you got. So the better you can manage your mana, the easier your life is. But make sure you have a stack of mana pots around. It's a very good investment. Make sure you speak up as a healer. You are in control of the lives of the team, so telling people use personals or focus this enemy down will help save you the amount of healing you need, giving you a little more free time. Free time is useful for doing damage or interrupting things or positioning. My favorite line to say of all time is during no coup defensive. During the storm boss, I'll say move in on storming or die. Works every time. Another good one is watch for frontals or stop getting hit by frontals. Again, it's okay to say those things, don't worry about it. Plan your cooldowns as the key levels get harder. Fortified and Tyrannical hit very different. You'll have very hard phases of damage, but they might vary from week to week or from pull to pull, and it's not universal. Sometimes it's class to class. I have some setups in the Ruby Life pools for Preservation Evoker to deal with the Blazebound Destroyers and their Infernal casts. Yeah, I gotta save Temporal Anomaly and cycle my cooldowns correctly, but like, yeah, I could just spin on Mistweaver, so it's important to plan things out, but just remember that it's not always going to be the same across all healers. Okay, I'm gonna try not to scare anyone with this one. Doing short math on incoming damage. So let's say a spell hits someone for 40% of their health bar. That means in theory that if they are 40% health and they get hit, they would die. But that's also sort of cutting it close, right? So I always like to give them a 10-20% health buffer. That spell does about 40 damage, or 40% of their health, right? Okay, then I'm not gonna let them drop below 50 or 55. There are situations where you can't just keep people topped up as a healer, and so it's important while you're doing damage or interrupting or whatever the heck you're doing that you can stop and go, hey, that person's a little low. I don't want them to die. One thing you can do that really helps though is making sure that your plates are set up, your enemy name plates are set up in such a way that you can see who they are targeting for their next cast. This is great for A, you can know who's about to get double bolted by something, and B, it's also useful for, oh, that one's gonna hit the tank. Okay, well, the tank's fine, the tank can handle it. Or, hey, that warrior probably has spell reflect up. I can let them reflect it. And of course, if they don't reflect it, you should go check if spell reflect is now on cooldown. Speaking of, OmniCD is an add-on that I use that lets you track cooldowns. Most things show up in OmniCD. I'll have my profile down below that covers most mitigation, active mitigation, and health pots. It's really important to know when your tank has absolutely no gas left and you need to start babysitting them. Or if a player's been targeted by too many mechanics, you can see they have nothing left. You can put a bubble on them or whatever you need to do to keep them alive. And while we're on interface, make sure for whatever you use for party frames, you can see debuffs. Make sure it's very visible, as the DBM and BigWigs style mods don't always call out every nasty dispel. I know LVUI has a feature where the health bar would turn like an alternative color when there's a dispel you can manage. Features like this are a game changer, especially for new healers. Health pots. You should have a fat stack of these within easy reach. As a healer, you don't really use them when DPS use them. You use them when you're busy healing other people and can't stop to heal yourself. They're OGCD, so you can use them right after casting a spell or right before you cast a spell. It's very, very important that you don't die as the healer. Damage is time save. I have an entire video on this topic if you want to watch it. Once you're in the 15 and beyond category, I want you to start knowing how to weave in your damage. There's footage that's been playing this whole time. I had a super close Temple of the Jade Serpent 23. It went down to a couple of seconds. If you do the math of the combat time and my percentage of damage, you'll find out that in that boss fight alone, I saved 12 seconds due to my DPS. Yeah, if I wasn't doing damage, we probably didn't time that boss fight. It's that important at high level play. Be flexible. Coming up with our own builds is fun, and it's more than viable, and I encourage it. But as the content gets harder, especially towards the 20 range or whenever gear score starts letting up, make sure you have cross-reference the meta builds. Metagame is inevitable, and I've also done an entire video on that on my old channel, but there will be a point where where you run into trouble healing or doing damage or helping control a pack. And you can't be doing something subpar if it starts costing entire runs. This isn't a huge deal. Again, until that 20 and beyond category, you can get away with a lot of fun builds. It's very important as you start getting better at the game that you do cross-reference more meta builds so you can understand the why and the how. That being said, sometimes there are easier builds that work well with different stat weights. So if you're learning a class and something is a little bit easier to start off with for healing, it's okay to use that while you're learning. Just again, be sure to cross-reference the more meta builds so that as you get better, you can swap to maybe more efficient talents. Also note that the game gets easier the more your rotations and buttons become second nature. This is something that I see across all of esports, but the less time you need to spend looking at your bars and the more time you can stay focused on the fight itself and your party frames, the easier your life gets. But this is a time thing. Let your brain do its whole neural pathway thing and learn. It will come to you. I really wish I had a list like this when I was first learning how to learn. There were a lot of pieces of information that players weren't telling me about dungeons and about runs that I just wish I had a better understanding of. Start with low keys. There's nothing wrong with learning on the lower end of things as you work up the gear score and the ability to start doing higher keys. But that's going to do it for this video. Again, hit like if you liked it, hit subscribe if you want more, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, friends.